mean, for all that, if you're going to delegate, you put a team in.
Danny and I can go in. Wait.
Another round. I can't like go like.
You can go into tab and you can. Fine, I can go find you yeah, I'm doing that deep, like, down, it goes backwards. It's not even a function anymore. It's like a backwards walk. We're much more well, objects supposed to. Yeah.
It's all
Wait,
flick.
this is-
All right.
Here we
It's all flick.
Excuse me.
Shall we begin?
Thank you.
Anyone not ready? Bernie Sanders stepped to the podium and launched a campaign for Democratic nomination for the presidency. The longest-running independent party politician, current senator from Vermont, has played the most American liberal spirit has been making headlines of them. The brave Marissa Johnson, Mayor Jacqueline Hoover stood up and confronted Bernie Sanders, confronted the comfortable spirit of America, confronted the white Christian heterosexual privileged man who will get attention to a black woman, and interrupted the normal American policy conversation begun with an uproar respectable black politics when Bernie Sanders stepped back and allowed the insertion of the Black Lives Matter movement. This was the performative break has never been okay. Trump white supremacy. Black people have been told to be patient while black women are raped and homes have been bombed. Be patient while black bodies have been lynched or incarcerated while babies go without breast milk. Be patient. Count protest. The British back is respectability same within confines of normal procedure never. And goes right time to call out black slaughters. White people avert responsibility, blaming victims while simultaneously castigating those who dissent in order to plead for black lives. Now is just not the right time. Now, okay? We're not journalists to journal treating our Harry Jacobs and then. The break a call for support and certain form of scrutiny, criticism, compressing, enduring legacy, force, conversation, support, for standing in front of the many fools who believe America's best interests enhanced and disrupt, making people uncomfortable speaking the truth, challenging systematic oppression that perform is a perfect strategy. It's time for the interruption, the disruption. It's time that Black Lives Matter, the Seattle Black women 2015, never been okay to watch some white supremacy in the country. I'll get the institution situated by patient white supremacy, saying something doing it for patient black women, watch the white times black men who be raped our homes, black men, women, children, which are famous, mother, dying babies, that are acid, investment, also health, underscore, psychological wounds, gender, mistreatment, challenging, centers, never been presented. Not back as we can see, never been the right time for black people to go solid for people, white people, always try to reverse responsibility, big community, saying good, so got to get comes back to the child race of a legal black women. Okay, for when you for an actor, when you voted against the humanistic institution of slavery or position to their Jacobs, you were named for demonstrating black someone murder, holding into a number of point thought it was a game. Martin Luther King Jr. used to see to appear to many as the many deal respectful when you were talking about peace and rights and peace, leading disregard for black law, only excitement when the capacity since one began. Radically treating the war market, use the rest of the news history also an alright for black men to use nothing but to defend themselves in the community against police violence, oppression, and the black person then and now in the country by usurpation, dehumanization, disadvantage, genocide. None of these were the right time support, serving more scrutiny, confronting, enduring place, forcing opposition, taking part in the stand. Many fools who believe the country built upon foundation, genocide, dehumanization, majority citizens, nonsense, best understand, disruption, making people uncomfortable speaking the truth, telling the systematic person unless black which is all social, cultural, academic, political, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, facts, matter, hold yourself accountable, gaining knowledge, understand the reason for social disruption, and or broadcast work in this man, institute, white supremacy, this field up, guys, or like it's a reason of making blacks, then I recommend that you back up and we call the interruption, the norms of debate, interrupt the politics, respectability that dictate comfortable conversation through topical version, the app and endorse of the other simulated plan actions, so negative can be a well-informed opponent, interrupt the predictable limited conversation, domestic state surveillance that provides the better decision-making guys are critical thoughts, so we can become respectable citizens of project democracy. We call for the break of white supremacy. We endorse the resolution question as a break that challenges the structure where assumption overturn breaking patterns to norms, seeming the fictional relation that give birth to progressive social change, diverse dialogue, misunderstanding the politics, politics, the break. The role of debate is to view the resolution as a proposition of value and engage in intellectual dialogue that breaks pedagogical norms and procedures that tend to limit discussion of oppression and respectable values as times well. The break has a new element to challenge the search of the assumption of overturning narrative understanding like break pattern, activist, double with definition, cross-with the challenge status quo, challenge the immediate relation between top about a handle program background and breaking the events. It's also meant to the claim where master McDonogh movement all directions down around through not just up and over the rule lines of alphabetic text break within music of the form setting condition vertical motion this mastery movement all directions one the break is birth progress social change inspiring thought all that drove dialogue when youth powerful control like insight motion desire intelligent the thought about current events break a testament survival sense of democratic agency affirm the artistic innovation radical social creative debate as transforming technology mirrors the vitality distance underlying queers diaspora culture by the works of performance into reflects a step out of the conformity structure none of the content is different but still part of the narrative art break is kind of possession integrates all design invalid the communal language much independently break also was then the void saying my fluency also space between the forms of the genealogy vertical and this bond beyond differential space those are different negotiating culture talking to the dislocation hybrid point resistant to colonial race everything possible to break that is the basic cultural resistance with slaves right building magic freedom dominance black subjectivity also to break the fracture makes out the kind of movement and decon subjectivity possible collaborative conservative critic informed vernacular social reality invisible ground with double caps and fold so to speak of the health response to the anatomy impulse race and the critical substantive indigenous system thoughts here have been regarded to knowledge of collective catalog artifact competent change that one of the weapons understanding poetic logic of the break and white supremacy on the political system that guides modern world design understood as political yet circular as the background of which other system we see we understand as political highly was needed global theoretical system framework situation discussion race and white race and the challenge white political philosophy we must recognize the political system white supremacy is built and white supremacy and political system make the modern world know it's a basic political system mention not accident white race privilege somewhere in for granted not easy informed dominate wasn't needed global theoretical framework challenging such white political philosophy was needed is a recognition race and white supremacy and political system and we call for the interruption of domestic surveillance out system white supremacy served up to our system of surveillance racial value victory equalities are bitter we will silently come in or raise neutrality while committing justice policy judged by excessive surveillance in the name of crime control that really shows the ongoing exclusion of black specifically like persistent condemnation of blackness high take 15 racial equality victors now seem bittersweet found common interest convergence diversity south and white men made motivation by the white non-legally enforced segregation by power white supremacy segregation now to racial neutrality racially coded racial neutrality used disproportionate African Americans having racial remains absent policy African Americans have taken the excessive surveillance and crime control policing and inspiring society action in black civil liberties and interest common self perpetual machine pursuit political benefit policy additions on ensuring the endless five lines a political preservation profile and the FBI's surveillance structure is designed to cement structural racial predictive policing disproportionately targets black people and depends upon racial profile and the media is focusing on the white side of the story called black injustice rating invisible at 015. Who's target just had to become black same philosophy driving surveillance technology to understand that to know racial justice and modern precinct perpetually maintain outgame comprehension class vertical policing just contact racial profiling discriminating data collection grounds that discriminate police parents and local law enforcement adopt surveillance technology FBI and rule that national citizen intend to use body type for South London interest domestic fusion centers the intent become local cooperative policing doesn't have legal racial profiling relies on this is the future of policing most terrifying aspects and visibility of those impact this is not a broken system working perfectly and to spine on millions of not or spine on black people we can have blacks matter ensuring technology not use of men racial hierarchy low community partners not gatekeepers what a big change culture trend that makes them black people routine we can counter inequality and racism makes all forms of violence and never must be rejected at racism since Amendment 2000 circling against racism and be undertaking the justice without what must not let the monster in the house accept race universalization ingredients in George Peter does not say this that George money cannot find moral order level unless the form racism stigmatization shooting out the racism and the captains and injustice and the violence and all injustice I can see but no other refusal racism condition for all morality at the political trust justice I must be accepted this principles not accept only competent violence destruction we are lot and we must say Black Lives Matter this address ties contemporary police violence to the history of slavery and segregation denying devaluation of Black lives saying this here in a public space the means of claiming our right to disrupt norms and rage against degradation of Black lives call for this part at the end of the round is ballot being black is not matter not really regards like can be killed or less go to the condition destitution not regards way it's supposed to be in recent change Black lives matter so important states obvious not been historically realized in the statement of average made for the right to live also change the history slavery definition segregation Versus 7 by grew towards the degradation of black on black was targeted and haunted by police were becoming emboldened. Ways to raise more African materials and ratifies the point of view state violence only happen when regarding to transform and race and become a way of seeing entering into presentation visual identity become hateful and unjustified harbor committed black lives matter. It must be said again and again, because of becoming normalized, which is intelligent forms of collective actors become obligatory, given that reason become a way of seeing not necessarily we insult the race and gender with the physical feeling. The perception of belief to be black is hard to be reaching for the gun force and the mind play out and see that form of thing become more reasonable all the time. Every time a grand jury accepts form of reason and ratify the idea of black and a population against which society must be defended. Important that we learn this race and noticeable. No one's led us to this place these forms of institution and inequality, daily kind of the practice of public mourning and political demonstration compared to when lives are considered ungrateful to grieve them openly protest when people assemble with the opposing form of race about their speaking back to the mood of just insisting one should be obvious, but it's not namely that the lost lives are unacceptable. Loss of black lives matter always risk being misheard, solved in public spaces, out of violence takes place, so there can be them in public space to oppose both race and violence, and act that reverberates to the public sphere.
Yep. Okay. Just ready? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. When did white supremacy crumble?
I mean, I guess I would say like the Enlightenment's like the first example of like white people theorizing like what whiteness and humanism is able to justify. I mean, I'm not like the white dudes back in like France and Europe that were like deciding these humanist philosophies. I guess it was like I haven't gone back in time. I can't tell you. Like,
So you don't know when or the historical background behind white supremacy?
Is the controlling, I guess, political system of modernity.
Right, I agree. I agree that it's a very problematic thing, but what is the historical and what is the pre-sequence behind that, right?
Look, we don't have to win a certain time where whiteness or white supremacy.
Well, I guess I'm not asking a
We
time.
just have to win that it's the unnamed political system within
I
society.
don't think I'm asking for a
Also don't
time
get
really.
why this. I also don't get why that's like a reason why like.
Right.
So I'm not really asking for a time. What I'm asking is who are these theorists and at what like period?
Dude, I'm not like some white dude in the 16th century.
No, I
can't
get
tell
that.
you, like,
Who are the theorists?
It's not about the theorists. Like, what is your question?
white supremacy
Okay,
exists.
sure. What is your
Regardless
structural,
of who theorizes, that's not going to make
what is your structural description
of what?
of the world writ large of how these organizations and institutions?
White supremacy. Mill says white supremacy is a political system. We don't see it as a political system because white supremacy.
Sure. So you advocate for
YC thinks that white supremacy is what guides the modern world. We think we should
I
break
have a
from
question.
that.
Now you say that you need to interrupt surveillance, right?
No.
What do you do?
Okay, two things. The interruption is Marissa and Mara. We think that we should be able to defend
Interruption.
their mode of interruption. We think that when they interrupted, that's a good idea.
Okay, so how do you perform that interruption?
Hold up. The part with the disruption is the break from domestic surveillance. That's the
Right.
part that we
Okay, so
perform
that
with scholars
disruption then, how do you perform that disruption?
through the induction of scholarship.
I mean, you just read eight minutes of
multiple
cards.
books. No,
How do you perform
no,
it?
that's not what the 1AC was. Two reasons. First of all, we have a defense of our scholarship, which is a break. Second of all, we think that the entire first section of 1AC where I explained that
Yes,
there are
I get
norms.
that.
Let me finish the question. When there are norms in debate, and then we're able to read an affirmative that is able to do things that are counterproductive to those norms, we think that those are active breaks. Go for it.
Next, you say that you make people uncomfortable. Who are you trying to make
That's not what I said. I said Marissa and Mara's interruption made white people uncomfortable. We think that uncomfortability is
Okay,
something
therefore,
that
like, is the 1AC supposed to make white people uncomfortable?
not the goal of the 1AC. The 1AC is supposed to try and break.
So how do you break
I
these
guess
pedagogical norms when
uncomfortability
you
might
read
be kind of
8 minutes
cool.
of
Like it's
cards?
cool to see white people get uncomfortable, but that's not the.
How do you
yeah.
break these pedagogical traditional norms when you read 8 minutes of cards?
Okay, there's a
Where is the
distinction.
performance
Let-
then
wait.
the disruption?
There's a distinction between norms and procedures. We think procedures are things
Procedures
like
are
speech
big
time.
forms.
Let me finish the
Sure,
question.
go ahead.
Things like speech times and being able to read cards, we think that those are all procedures. We think norms are the ideas that you need to say the United States federal government should, or that we should uphold like the
But also
resolutions
there's
and methods, like
debate-based
solving things. We think
norms
that's-
as well, right? There are debate forms of speaking. And
Yeah, there's a
spelling
difference
norms.
between norms and procedures. If I got up here and spoke for 30 minutes and
But a
like
procedure
did
can
a
also
dance
be a
and, like,
norm
showed
too.
the
I
video,
don't think they're
obviously
mutually exclusive.
the pedagogical activity would not exist.
Okay.
It's going to be a one-off. No
I
cards.
understand.
No cards. And I have. Yeah, no cards.
No case.
No case. Just one-off.
Are we flowing the one off on a separate piece? Okay, I'll do that together. just so we're honest.
Is everyone ready? Is everyone good?
I think so.
Okay, cool.
Alright.
Okay, cool. Whether it's the rich black, the poor black, the working in the store black, the run, the shoot, the score black, hollow tips at your back, 'cause the gays that don't adore blacks. Bottom line, you're black. And at the end of the day, 12 gotta bring the score back. Whether you're slinging crack because you got to, banging like a pyro, or a lucky one who makes his way up to finish in high school, neither one is coming home, because even a diploma is a threat that can get you onto the dome. If you're Muslim, you're a threat. If you're black, boom, you're dead. But white equals privilege, you just ain't right in the head. Terrorism lurks, but we'll never soldier and tank it, because the system can never see through the white blanket. The terrorism continues, and this is when it festers, when you're wasting your time on the harmless protesters. And that's when it happens, bang times 9, dead black bodies on the floor in the house of the divine. The system says fuck them, and they're just dead, silenced. Let's talk about the whiteness and how they grew up with violence. How do you know that this system is flawed? How do you know that the media is a fraud? When we're still at fault for dying, just trying to worship God. Why can't a white boy kill 9 in church and get protection? Because that bulletproof is never reserved for the darker skin complexion. This is the connection, the blatant imperfection, that all comes back to the analysis of data collection. 100 a month, another animal is put down. They talk shit on TV because your skin is black or brown. They go to great lengths to ensure your demise, make the truth to become lies just to forget about black lives. To combat the KKK, the Enforcement Act was done, so they took off their white robes for blue gear and a gun. Shit didn't change because they stopped the lynching. It's that killing us with their guns was way more efficient. Scorn the white saviors, the legislators, who think they can save us with their pieces of paper, when in reality that black ink is just a stain in nature that glorifies their hate and their racist faces. We won't let their lies change us and stop us from embracing the life that our culture gave us. That paper always turns to ashes when their puppets get malicious. Gonna hold me down because he was looking suspicious. Yet they still expect us to be out here snitching, lashing out to internalize the hate of our past and present generations. I say generations because that's when you're young and when you're first exposed to the lies that roll off their tongue. They control everything around us, our favorite places, the debate space that they try to take from us, our affirmative cases. They do all of this with hate on their faces and tell us that the shit that we do makes us disgraces. Like when they told Jesse Owens to stop racing his races. But they swear they ain't racist. They say lies with straight faces and do whatever it takes to keep us in our hopeless places. But those places are not hopeless. Those places are full of life. Those places are gracious. We're heavy in the game, fluttering in the joy and listening to the rain. The ways that we rearrange and give life to for what us is normally plain. There's no reason to lash out, bash out, crash out, because the whites created the notion of how to act out. We ain't really trying to pass out, have doubts. We're just out here trying to cash out. Now, tell me that I'm worthless and that I can never challenge the fact that this world and this community is unbalanced. I will not listen because I'm aware of my talents, and that I can say. They confront the drive, but they do not confront the underpinnings, and that's why I'm taking you back to the beginnings. Finesse is just my life, and that's every day. You know they're plotting on me, but I don't really care. I'm getting mine. I'm always getting mine, and nobody's safe. I'm never caught lacking because it's no face, no case. No face, no case. I'm just living and dancing. I'm winning this race. I'm out here chilling, calling plays. I gotta hit the short game because they know the long distance will always be the plan A. I'll make their threats illusory and push forward with ease. I'll move quickly like a winter breeze, and I'll refuse to appease. I'll slither within the wind, I'll twist and I'll bend. I'll jump for joy like a young child at the fair. I'll be obnoxious and hope you stare as I bathe in life, not giving a care. I'm out here shining behind the scenes, you know what I mean? I've been about this life, and I'm getting smarter and smarter with cheer. Feel the beauty that we need to survive and break free and find life in hell and embrace life to the sound of the victory bells. That itself will expel those who try to control where we dwell and eat away at our beauty with their disgusting, vile smell. They try to steal from us, leave us with nothing more. But that's when I laugh because they do not know what's in store. Because we control what they are, because we come before. We are the structure, we are the notion, and the ghost is defeated with our full devotion. Our beautiful commotion that flows through the ground like water in the ocean. Their opinion doesn't really matter. This shit will all be over. Their luck has run out, and this game is over. But for us, it's the discovery of a 4-leaf clover. Theirs has only 3, and they're dead. As I keep reading, the black writing consumes my paper, but now it's consuming each and every acre. This is the end for the vile ghost that was never a friend. Their self-fulfilling prophecy will never work, and you're running into trouble while your life is at risk. But hey, prove me wrong and finish the sacrifice, knowing that there will be no afterlife. You're already second-guessing yourself, and this is why you shall falter. The legacy isn't the beginning. They are not the beginning. They are not the roots. They do not falter us from growing. Interruption or not? The condemnation is within the nation, but how did that come to be? The condemnation continues, and how will you break free? The condemnation continues, and you weaken. The condemnation continues and consumes you. We must know Black Lives Matter. We must know Black Lives Matter. We must know Black Lives Matter. Call for this card at the end of the round. Call for this card at the end of the round. Why? 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 Was there really an interruption? The condemnation consumes you before we even know. The condemnation consumes you before you even grow. The condemnation consumes you before you get to know. The condemnation consumes you, and the white covers you like snow. The condemnation continues. It looks like the tables have turned. Yes, that sounds about right. It's getting darker, darker, and darker. I guess it's time for me to say goodnight. I need sleep, so I'll get plenty. Process.
Why vote neg?
Because we endorse a better methodology than you.
What is that methodology?
First, performing disruption, connecting to our argumentation, and we will eventually access larger impacts than you do.
What?
Affect is real.
Yeah, I'm confused.
That
What
is the
part of the
disruption.
performance of the 1NC resolve the implications of the affirmative?
First of all, the fact that I performed.
Okay, what constitutes performance?
I believe that personally I think me writing all of this poetry, that's a
So
little
us
bit that
writing
constitutes.
a narrative
And also,
at the top
like,
of the
you
app,
need-
why is that not a performance?
A performance is breaking away from the traditional norm, really, and really giving affect or personal
Yeah.
narrative like that what we just gave.
Also,
What
also
part
you
of
should not.
being a non-traditional app was not a performance?
It's pretty obvious that you're not the type.
We would
of
also say that we should.
Also, why do you get to dictate what a performance is in the context
We're
of
not
the
dictating
1NC?
what performance
It's not.
is, but for instance, we don't believe that performance should be used to lash out, etc.
What part of the wait? You don't think performance should be used to lash out?
No.
No, that's not the entirety.
So what was the point of the performance of the 1NC for if it wasn't to lash out?
It's a disruption towards the affirmation of.
Why aren't disruptions lashing out?
Because all I just did was embrace my life. That wasn't lashing out at anyone.
Why is that a reason? Okay, why did the
I don't understand
1NC
me
speech
embracing
act
my life
disprove
lashing
the
out.
thesis of
Because
the
in the
affirmative?
status quo, reactionary suicide is becoming a real thing.
Why did the
People don't value
1NC
their life, especially
disprove
in
the value of the affirmative?
What was that?
Why did the 1NC performance disprove the value of the affirmative?
It's a better methodology than the affirmative.
You don't perform.
Okay, I get that it's a better methodology. What part of the 1AC's construction?
I'll argue
was
that the
flawed?
1AC eventually becomes reactionary, so methods like the 1NC are necessary to combat that.
How does the 1AC become reactionary?
Because
Because
you're
it's a-
lashing out as
It's
a
a
form
form
of response.
of lashing
So what's
out.
the alternative to lashing out? Not lashing out?
Yeah, embracing life,
That's fine.
i.e. Black lives, we know Black Lives Matter.
What pedagogical
Performance.
purpose does reading a poem serve?
What?
What pedagogical purpose does reading a poem serve?
That wasn't a poem, that was Black Poetics.
There is a huge
Okay.
distinction between
What
poetry is
pedagogical
control outlet.
purpose does the performance of the 1NC serve?
I just told you I embraced my life.
One is survivability, right?
What's the implication of that for the judge's ballot?
Huh?
What is the implication of the 1NC's performance for the judge's
To
ballot?
embrace my life, I just said that.
Okay, I'm just so lost as to how that is a way that you disprove the value of the 1NC.
Because
What part of
the 1AC lashes out, the 1NC, I embraced my life. That's a better methodology.
lashing out bad. Cool.
Yeah, I said that at the top.
Are we doing 10 or 8? Sorry, what was the time?
How much y'all got left? 840.
Is it going to be sent? Case K? I kind of float them on the same thing.
Yeah. Alright, just straight out.
Okay.
So I hope you could. Then we're not ready. Jesus.
Every time.
The app is a break in the vertical debate and a break in the politics respectability. The role of these debaters to engage in intellectual dialogue that breaks and interrupts pedagogical norms and procedures that attempt to limit discussion of oppression and respectable boundaries. Goals for the team can best create the break and interrupt the system. Recreate a break a stand that challenges the structure where assumptions are overturned. Breaking norms of seeming fluctuation. We must understand the poetics in the politics of the break. That's time. It's the concession of case means that are role in debate and framing methods in this debate comes first. That means that a right to look is a prerequisite to the feasibility of the alternative. This debate is not about the justifications of the use of the affirmative. The neg must win that our methodology is better than its debate. Now go to the criticism. Their philosophical criticism is nothing more than a politics, respectability, and ivory tower, Eurocentric white bread justification for black suffering, the control of black bodies, leaving the complex individuality unnamed, so that when Mike Brown is shot, we have nothing to see, nothing to say. When Sandra Bland is trying to hung in the jail cell, we have just don't understand how the choices of white supremacy work. When Oscar Grant is lying down on his back, handcuffed and shot in the head because the white police officer thought he was pulling out his taser. Somehow the biopolitical structure of governmentality prohibits people calling that racism straight up. White supremacy don't allow the offensive rhetoric of the postmodern linguicism demystify the truth. We keep it simple. On the block, two black women stood up and confronted the political reality of white supremacy and named the political system that our Mills evidence talks about that is the interruption that is the value within this debasement into domestic surveillance topic. The case comes first. Mills indicts the use of that philosophy that ignores white supremacy. Charles Mills is writing a book entitled Racial Contract that he's using philosophical rhetoric of white virtue appearance like Rousseau and satirical criticism that labels philosophy one of the widest sciences that ignores the material reality, the social construction of black necessity, the most significant political structure of modernity, unnamed. We discuss the deep philosophical arguments while black men, women, and children are target practice of law enforcement. That's Laughlin et al. 2K15. Police in the United States are killing people at a rate that will result in 1,100 fatalities by the end of this year. An average of 3 people killed per day during the first half of 2015. 547 people have been killed by the end of June, including 25-year-old Freddie Gray in Baltimore. When adjusted accurately tracking the U.S. population, the totals indicate that black people are being killed by police at more than twice the rate of white or Hispanic or Latino people. Black people are killed by police were also significantly more likely to have been unarmed. The continuation of the disproportionate killing of the unarmed black Americans is something we should be deeply ashamed of, committed to changing urgently, because it's very literally life or death situation for so many people. The U.S. government does not currently keep the country have a comprehensive record of people killed by the police, and said the FBI runs a voluntary program for law enforcement agencies to submit numbers of justified homicides if they choose. We live in a time and space that dictates that if we can't prove it with data, then it didn't happen. Yet we know that the people are continuing to suffer in these ways every single day. On the 23rd of June, Indianapolis, 34-year-old Joshua Dyer was killed when police fired at his vehicle in which he was a passenger. On the 15th of June in South Lake Tahoe, California, police said that an unarmed 22-year-old named Chris Jackson, the unarmed young man, was only wearing shorts and socks at the time he was killed and had his knife hanging out the window. No weapons were recovered during the following incident. When are we going to stand up like Marissa and Mari and debate and interrupt the imagery of white men that silence the killing? When is the right time to be politically and philosophically correct within the debates to say that domestic surveillance is fucked up and nothing more than the institution of white supremacy that's founded upon black death? Remember that their alternative has to be a reason to reject the break of the curse. It's not to be a reason to reject the break or criticize the break when we should be in solidarity with the break to challenge systems like white supremacy reform, the break that resists the authority of the police to say move on, there's nothing to say here, and nobody can perform the disruption in the first place. We perform the break better than the negative. Just because they repulse for 8 minutes doesn't mean that they can effectively breaking from the system, and they can't say that I don't connect from my arguments when every time I look on TV or scroll through Facebook feed, there's news about a nigga that got murked over new shoes. But first we gotta question white supremacy and how that affects me. Why wasn't the cop that sent to jail? It's constantly pounding my brain. He can't not only fail to disprove the affirmative, but also prove that we leave this one's individuality unnamed at the end of the debate. And they screw up the function of art. Their prosaic explanations of their own performance domesticates aesthetics cannot and should not be translated into prose. If it serves its decentralizing purpose as Davis in one. Unlike those ways of thinking that the rest of a priority concept, artistic thinking is inherently and openly experimental. The implication is common culture no less than the ontology of artistic, and the primary mode of historical knowledge art must be liberated from preconceptions and limitations of rhetorical humanism and the ratio that keep on imposing the new nightmare of the inadequacy of the journalistic method John Hershey used in the heroship and the magnitude of his subject. The only way to gain the knowledge is to create the artistic form equal to that of the subject. The new nightmare that enters history and the heroship will be known as when we evolve the radically new artistic form requires the possibility that it's grounded in the self-reference that defines art and the mode of cognition that is results into the inanimate critique of its own forms. The content of its work of art is radically experimental. We understand it in a way that is fundamental. When we translate this meaning into an abstract terms, why and propositional statements and rhetorical statements, we find it impossible to wait for that which becomes the concept of becoming an image because we dimly know what we need a concept, because we cannot endure the agony which the artistic awareness admits us in permutation. The perm is the plan of the alternative are not a first choice. It's not about opportunity costs. It's about sequences, and the ideologies aren't different in our scholarship. It's syncretic. It's the negative job to believe the app is a bad idea, and the alt and the app can't function in the same way. Permutation give the alt to the break is a permutation because we should interrupt the methodology of the one is he to one the alternative to get some of the action. The Thomas evidence is an aspect of the break that allows the alternative to occur. That's Thomas. In 12, blending with irony, double consciousness, navigating, shifting, and change is in fact a stabilizing methodology. Supplements was constituted by a collective improvisational relationship to all its guys that fortified the resistance to biological chaos of racism, sexism, and class warfare that constantly going to enter the desires of horizons. They knew without a doubt that everything had a spiritual component, and now that this fact can hilariously annotate and gravely important. My upbringing was an education and learning to manage epistemic rupture rather than fear. It was the break that inspires possibilities and improvisations, the vernaculars and ethos and locus of continuous consciousness, stabilizing force and a critical method rooted in the collective memory of the coolness of the soul that comes from the balanced composition will and with their vernacular worldwide views not sought complete with aspirations of education, careers, or social fears. And here their poem, no reason to lash out that silence. Yes, we can embrace life but not having conversations like the one they see results in that silence. The alternative to not having discussions of the instances of the individuality and white supremacy and norms of whiteness and sounds that silence, but that's the invisibility of whiteness and preserves and material white privilege that's Crenshaw in 97. First, the ideology of white privilege maintains its invisibility through rhetorical signs. Rhetorical signs protects the invisibility of whiteness because it both reflects and says it's something that to be white is the natural condition, the assumed norm. Rhetorical signs about what whiteness preserves material white privilege because it makes it mass existence, it makes it denial of white privilege possible. However, ideologies also work that the rhetorical signs which is concealed privilege ideological systems are made up of both presence and absence, but most reversing marked in terms to signify the relation of what is absent, unmarked, the unspoken, the unsayable. The ideology of white privilege works with rhetorical signs about whiteness. Now don't let them try to make this argument that because we spread or recause in the one I see that we aren't a break from the traditional norms. Like my partner said in the one I see crosses the distinction between rules and the norms and procedures. Norms are the types of arguments that we read within this water. Do we question things like white supremacy at the end of the day? Or are we always silent on the issue procedures? Or things like amens or presenting pieces of evidence within this route, scholarship within this route to prove that we actually have a method that's efficient in actually solving something or challenging something like white supremacy at that end. So we create that break with the topics evidence in our methodology. And yes, listen to their poem. They will not listen. So what happens when we don't ask how to comply? We don't confront the underpinning. Also, don't forget on the part that we get it because the ideology of fluidity at the end of the wrong. Yes, we can be optimistic and yes, we can embrace life and questioning white supremacy. Maybe think twice because when we don't have a self-fulfilling process of prophecy or second guess ourselves, we have the best starting point at the end of this debate. Process.
Are you gonna defend, like, through the entirety of this debate that white supremacy is the best starting point for, like, this debate?
Okay, first of all, our starting point isn't white supremacy. Our starting point is the break in the way that anti-blackness has shaped modern surveillance with the high-tech and serial evidence that says that blacks are disproportionately affected through these forms of surveillance.
Okay, so
our Mills evidence says that white supremacy is the unnamed political system. Through the break, we challenge it.
I have a question. Is there a distinction between white supremacy and anti-blackness, or are they the same?
Okay, so why did you start with, like, a criticism of white institutions? Like,
We
what are
did
these-
not. The first piece of the one is
Right.
was a criticism of the notion of respectability.
The first
white
one,
supremacy
yeah.
comes in after that to explain how and why respectability props up white supremacy.
Okay, so how does white supremacy come to exist?
How does white supremacy come to resist?
Come to exist. Why does white
Come to
supremacy exist?
We don't have to win like how it came to exist or when it came to exist. We just have to win that it's the unnamed political system that makes the modern world what it is today. And if we
I'm not asking you what you have to win.
Why
Why does white supremacy exist, and how did it come to be within society?
Dude,
The white supremacy
we
that
don't have the interpretation or definition with that within the 1AC. I'm just repeating myself over. Like we just need to win. The whiteness is the unnamed political system that we need to break from.
Okay. Next, you talk about how. Okay, so was through your defining process, would the 1NC also be a break?
Not in our architecture.
Why not?
Because you're not breaking from the norms of white supremacy. When you stand up and you want to see and say that we should have not shut up, we should have.
How is a black person affirming their life not breaking away from the norms of white supremacy?
Okay, it's not about your personal context within this round. It's the idea of the scholarship of your own personal.
My personal scholarship is not breaking away from white supremacy. How?
We think that
Because
there are
you're-
levels of minute breaks. We think that the broader idea that lashing out is bad is a white agenda to people to justify that people don't get rowdy or speak out and state.
Okay, so the idea that lashing out is bad is white, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, next you say that you read the silence of the Crenshaw piece of evidence. How was the 1NC that?
Because you're silent on the issue of how white supremacy structures the modern world and what it is today, that it is the unnamed political system.
The whole top of the Poetics was a criticism of that.
and the
Why is
second-
that silence?
Because you're silencing on the fact when you say let's be optimistic, let's not lash out, let's not challenge these things. So your silence on not lashing out.
So are you defending that lashing out is good?
Yes, that would be
That's
our
the
1AC.
1AC. That's the
Lashing
break.
out,
Not done.
breaking,
Hey, just a question.
interrupting.
Just a question. Okay, so. We'll see. Now, next. Okay, so what is the, like, why do you as the AF need the ballot?
What?
Why do you as the AF need the ballot?
To just prove that our methodology is right, that we should question things like white supremacy, we should have a break in these procedural norms and pedagogical norms within the debate space within civil society.
Okay, so even if you do that, why does it grant you a ballot?
I'll take credit.
I think Regan was really supportive even with her, I don't know, she just wanted you to respond. Did she not fix you?
She did.
Okay.
I was trying to figure out if there was one
I don't know what's happening. I like the news characters.
Yeah.
Wait, what do you want to add? What would you like to do? You're okay.
Stop prep. 828 left. Let me get this.
No cards?
Yeah.
You saying yes as in yes cards or?
Yeah.
yes as in no cards?
There. Yes, cards.
How much you got?
We have 830 left. I'm just flashing for a million.
I just think, I don't respect your time for this.
We just like text mom. She's nice.
I think I got two. What's our table?
Did you hit reply also?
Oh yeah, you just did reply.
Oh,
If you hit reply all, then it goes back.
yeah, I'll do that.
So like, I'm judging, it's okay. It's okay.
Apply to all.
What's up?
Not put good.
You came through today?
Okay, I think it worked this time.
Just a second.
Did y'all get it?
That's why I'm taking it.
So, awesome.
Okay. That's good. My man's created the order here, so I gotta listen. Okay.
Okay, so the order is a K overview on a separate piece of paper, and then case.
Why?
Just because it'll make the line by line easier, unless we can just tell them.
That's my mind.
Okay.
That's why I asked you why. That's true, Doug, but I want to kill those trees. Go ahead.
That's fair enough.
I'm not going to give him a cheat. That's what I'm trying to say.
Alright, are we all good? Okay. The next question debate is whoever provides a better methodology for survivability against whiteness. Extend you wanted the analysis that we are controlling the root cause of the affirmative impact of your singular manifestation anti-black result of as a result of being black and white dominating the world. Their arguments that racism is a terminal impact is an independent link to the criticism that allows for the fluidity of Eurocentrism to continue, never preventing any significant change. The lashing out of the launch of the affirmative in the system a result of that perpetuates any ethics that was suffering to be exchanged into power relations, self-hatred, and hatred of the world out of the inability to change it. This is why we're impacting your Afro-pessimistic ideology. We control their impacts and provide only structures to strengthen anti-black that explains the hesitations of our hierarchies of power. Racism is a symptom of anti-black result of us the pathology extent but Scotland black poetics and says the legacies in the beginning they are not the beginning, they are not the roots, they do not falter us from growing interruption or not. The condemnation is within the nation, but how does it come to be? The condemnation continues, how we break free, the condemnation continues. This is the politics that greatly exemplifies that we don't need to appease the white state but rather find affirmation and alternative does. The alternative is the fundamental rejection, the affirmative in favor for revolutionary battle of poetic. This is the only way for certain bodies to avoid internalizing white hatred. For example, when lashing out doesn't work, then they internalize that hatred and kill themselves in the reactionary reflex against self-hatred and self-aggrandizement. Power relations will always be broken to convict. Result about the alternative represents the epitome, rejecting the accentuation of racism, disclosing the imaginary victory. Donald was described in the what is he, regardless of what he said, what is he that work for black voters because they refused to perform the revolutionary suicide to fight hope, they need affirmation with the hell in life that acts with the largest interruption and disruption in the world. We control the largest impact with the largest methodology for the black body to survive within the world around when all conceded throughout the entirety of the tuition, which means you're not going to get one AR, no leverage. Thus, the result of our social political orientation of the world where large has been shaped by the structural assumptions that surround the result of that. The result of anti-black and the blatant imperfection are related to what he sees the epitome of Eurocentric obsession with self-aggrandizing politics, their mistargeting, and the pathology is reason why they continue to let that happen. Also, you're going to vote negative because we control the largest methodology with the largest impact on performative black poetics that locates the cultural pedagogy and power in the body as questionary condition for the possibility for the subversion of whiteness, which means they are a huge wing like whites do. They let whiteness function in a liberal economy to continue the war and facet for. Performative pedagogy is a method in theory the body can ask questions that points to the structure of missionary whiteness and can ask those in position about the questionary body experience whiteness function and dominant discourse of the unmarked culture. Culture about the performative pedagogy as a method of inflection that brings theory to the body to question the normal, stable, inevitable actualization of racial nurturing suffers the possibility of making non-negative cultural oppression to begin subverting the invisibility of whiteness in there. That benefits our performance in this out to your methodology and permutation. First is survivability, the revolutionary potential of performing the blackness in the lens and result of will always create better representation of all because we are not going to lash out and be nihilistic about life, but rather find affirmation and charming bells into life that can critical skills to survive. Second, our critical thinking skills because we understand the whiteness of the come to interrogate and criminalize black bodies necessary for cultivating the revolutionary tools to address whiteness. Thus, we get an impact on critical thinking skills. And third, our education and interpretation of debate the site for a social political analysis of structural description and political consideration that opens up space for performative black poetics. So we'll do more analysis on this later on the framework debate and next on the line. Next. They say the affirmative to the break and engagement in the international or an interruption and dialogue. No, you don't do anything. There's no material change coming out of the entirety of what you see because they don't perform that pedagogy or even perform any instance of creating that disruption. The what they see is coming out with the only performative pedagogy that can actually dislocate culture power of the war and fast over it is over. They say we break traditional norms. No, you don't. And I'll get that to the later. They say there are prerequisites. However, there's no clear articulation of what that prerequisite even looks like. The white supremacy should be prioritized over anti-black as a result of that props up white supremacy in the first place. They say we don't need to locate a historical or empirical example or white supremacy props up but it's because the result of the Eurocentric romanticism of the liberal economy that creates possibility for white supremacy even prop up and more. They say the case is white bread of politics and respectability. However, your case is more of the politics and respectability. We're late turning this argument because you don't perform the black prescription or the black politics that are necessary and the survivable strategy, i.e. the plantation conflict was a necessary place for for black kinship structure to actually use black poetics, including and delivery and actually survive into these structures, which is why you are reactionary suicide. You don't find hope or survivability inside the black life, and your pessimistic attitude will always continue to structure to exist. Moreover, they say white supremacy is the root cause of violence over this is not true. They are white supremacy, not anti-blackness. Anti-blackness is the drop result by which created the possibility for their impacts. Charles Mills' analysis is wrong because he gets analysis on whiteness as a racial construct, not a structural anti-black structure. We live in a world that is not just based on white supremacy, but a non-black world based on anti-blackness as a result of it, which means we control the uniqueness of all their impacts. In the prior question, we are the prerequisite. The distinction between white supremacy and anti-blackness is clear. This is section 10. The political ontology erases the phrase borrowed from the work of political theorists and Wilderson, supplemented the paradigm of comparative ethnic and racial study in two principal ways. First, by moving conceptually from the purpose of destruction by reframing racism based, but not as a social relation that is grounded in anti-blackness rather than white supremacy. These are all clear distinctions that white supremacy is predicated on whiteness studies, which were used by white individuals instead of black individuals, which makes it the co-option DA because all the white supremacy location arguments are based on the white studies that were used in the fanatical Eurocentric or romantic era, which probably means that although it may be a small difference, it's a very important distinction that anti-blackness is a result of an ontological power view from blackness in which white supremacy pinpointed study based on white groups, i.e. your Mills evidence. This is the liminal drive behind white supremacy and result of it creates the possibility of anti-blackness. How do you even consistently perform your advocacy, which is the reason why you are also part of the advocacy. Moreover, they say the U.S. actually U.S. actually killed black voters via the police, which was their life at 15 evidence. However, we agree there's no clear articulation why this links to the negative, but the difference is that we did something, you did not. The performance will always come first off the word of fact supported evidence. Next. They say no link. Is that they perform. However, you have not performed black poetics or even created a standard or even a black poetics for obvious reasons. The judges can already know that there is a clear distinction coming out of the negative block here. Moreover, they say we can't break power. However, performative can create material changes of survivability, which all that benefits the entirety of the negative and disadvantage to the permutation. That they say the affirmative should be not. They say art should not be prose. Also, there is no one evidence. There's no link argument here that art is a Eurocentric romantic ideology. We are not that. We are a survival strategy that creates liberatory potential for tools. They say permutations of both. Now the Thomas 12 evidence, however, all linked are disastrous to permutation. There are 8 of them. First, the strategic whiteness decided shifts to absorb and discard alternative epistemology to challenge permanence turns all their arguments about breaking the pedagogical norm because the permutation is backdrop of attaching white liberal projects to another two is the pathology that is targeted and how racism is constructed in status quo and how the pathology of blackness is able to manifest itself in the system impressions and more than just a silencing link but a fundamental vision that allows blackness to be assimilated. 3 is the self-aggrandizement that decide their will to bring absolute control with the desire for control itself. This is the epitome of Eurocentric logic that when you lash out, that is the same thing about white politicians always lash out and also gain power. This is the same thing, which means for the black imaginator, this side, the desire for the utopian imagined realness of resistance subjectivity does not create or even imagine the reality, the snapshots of why their movements will always fail in the inevitable structure that hold them in place, which is why the optimism and the revolution of black poets always come first and 5, the permanent you can never solve because where in the hell is the poetry, the black poet coming out of the entire what you see in this thing, that was the performance this side and 7, the performance can never solve because the one you see lashing out is the structural desire that represents the epitome of mind.
Alright, so first question is, how come y'all claim y'all have like such a better performance at the break? You just like spread their cars on into it. It's just
Hold on. First of all, Young isn't black, therefore he cannot perform black poetics. That's why he referenced.
So he doesn't advocate your method.
What?
I understand. So he doesn't advocate the method that you presented in the
Yeah, he does. He referenced my method and why and he referenced the method that I access and why that it's better.
But then you can't advocate it within his speech.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, so then I'm saying, how can you say he performed the method when he just spread in like red cards in this one seat?
Saying the negatives team performance.
Young can stand in solidarity with me and advocate this method as better. It's always going to be better than lashing out and dying.
What does it mean to say white supremacy is the symptom and anti-blackness is the pathology?
There's a clear distinction, right? There's white supremacy is the propped up study based on white studies of the Eurocentric romantic era, right? We control the historic antecedents. Rather, anti-blackness is the new contortations where Wilderson and Fanon talk about that this is a social and ontological relationship based on blackness.
How was anti-blackness new?
No, I didn't say it was new. It was a nuance that Wilderson introduced, that there's a distinction between white supremacy
So this
and
is between
anti-black.
white supremacy and anti-blackness. Like,
Yes.
White
So we
supremacy
need to
was a
argue.
study that was
Why
controlled
do we need to
by
do
white
that?
activists. Anti-blackness
how
is
are we
the structural substance that
how are
created-
we reactionary suicide when we're not afraid to die in the face of this revolution that we're presenting within the 1AC?
No, because you are lashing out. That lashing out means you
How is that
internalize
reactionary
self-hatred.
suicide?
Because you said, oh, I'm not good enough. I am the, I guess you're not good, or I guess you're not as
Lashing,
equal
it's the fact that lashing out will never be a good methodology because it
So now lashing out
because
is
you
not
just
a
assume that you are like
Okay,
on a lower
you
status.
defending lashing out is a bad idea because the idea
that's
of
fine.
lashing out is the back structure of ressentiment, the concept of ressentiment, the concept of
How is breaking from traditional norms of debate in society not a performance of our men?
What you don't perform, right? The Black Poetic, it's pretty obvious. Like,
Okay,
the
how
judges
can you
know
tell
that.
us what is or what is not performance?
I mean,
of our
it's
species?
obvious. Like the
What do you
judges
mean it's
know,
obvious?
right? The
It's
Black
not. We're
Poetic
not
is
telling you
obvious.
that you writing a narrative is not performance. We're saying that if you're going to say that that advocating of lashing out being good is performance, that's a bad form of performance because the notion of lashing out.
Lashing out is a good form of performance. You said lashing out is a good form of retaliating against white supremacy.
That's bad.
Yeah, you said that's the whole 1AC.
Like, there's two problems.
You said
One,
the whole. Yes, you said that. That was the whole
Alright,
joke you
alright.
made where you said that's the app. We're saying that whole
why
conception
are you
is
telling
white.
black people to be complacent under white supremacy?
What?
Why are you telling black people to be complacent under white supremacy?
I'm not telling them that. I'm saying that your method is wrong. Our method is better. To be
There's
optimistic,
no
spiritual life
no one is
question.
telling black people to be complacent. It's saying not to lash out.
Like, white structures feeds off the racial pleasure. Like, Farley talked about this too, that, like, the racial pleasure off of whiteness of black bodies trying to lash out
Listen
is what
to this.
feeds structures to exist in the first place. That's also horizontal.
No, I'm just saying.
Okay.
Oh, no, it's
Oh, we'll take a little bit of problem. Force.
Oh, no, keep going.
Oh. Okay. We used 17 seconds. What do we have?
Y'all are going everything just down, right? So I can just start. Or,
Yeah, just point out the argument you're referencing and do your work.
okay.
Do you know how much press time we have left? We just used 17.
Round stands.
You use how much?
We just used 17 for the webinar. 8, 11. 8, 11. Awesome.
What's your order?
I'm starting it framework.
But like, we're just gonna just.
Okay. Everyone's good? Tell me that I'm worthless and that I can never challenge the fact that the world and the community is unbalanced. I will not listen because I'm aware of my talents, and that I can say. They confront the drive, but not the underpinnings. That's why I'm taking you back to the beginnings. The legacy isn't the beginning. They are not the beginning. They are not the roots, and they do not falter us. They do not prevent us from growing. Interruption or not. They is white supremacy. But the first time you hear anti-blackness from the affirmative and the cross-sex, the second affirmative constructive, they concede that they start from a break. There's a methodological disadvantage to the affirmative, that they start with a discussion of white supremacy and not anti-blackness. The inherent European, the individual drive to pulverize, exploit, and destroy the black body is what constructs and created the institutions of white supremacy. This means that starting from using a discussion that starts from a point of anti-blackness as opposed to white supremacy would solve the affirmative. Next, there's a methodological. This is also a methodological reason why the 1AC is bad. You were a break, but you were the wrong break. We were the best break because the whole 1AC was a criticism of white supremacy and anti-blackness. But we are also a survivability strategy and a method of life affirming you will never change power, nor will you ever survive because you concede that condemnation will consume you. That's why it's key to know Black Lives Matter as opposed to shouting Black Lives Matter at white people because they will never give a fuck now. Where impact turning your role of the ballot and framework claims that diversity ballot results want to sadly posit the value of the ballot where it didn't exist in the first place in the same form of imaginary politics that becomes the epitome of results about the ballot becomes self-serving and the form of self-aggrandizement where the affirmative uses their suffering narratives for a simple ballot that supposedly solves all their harms is the imaginary backward of results upon X is the reality denial to sad the role of the ballot claims are a tool that only satisfies victim in a pursuit of self-retreat against the realities of anti-blackness. This only exacerbates a pajology of reality, like the ballot is not a piece of paper anymore, but something that transcribes meaning into an affirmative that doesn't exist.
Skip the part.
Next is the exclusion dissad. The role of the ballot is an arbitrary tool of self-aggrandizement that tries to exclude the participation of debaters in the round. Regardless of what you say, the role of the ballot moots everything we say and makes them superior in this round, just like how they say reject the negative because only we matter. This acts as an alienation of the impotence of the world in outweighs and turns the case. Next is the empathy dissad. They try to create an empathetic connection. The role of the ballot forces the judge and the spectator to affirm their life rather than allowing to have a subjective position in the world in the first place. Obviously, the 1NC was able to affirm our lives without calling for a ballot. This empathetic connection is a form of exclusion of the debate space that will always be an independent theoretical voter for fairness in education. Next is libidinal ballot dissad. The ballot serves as a fundamental super boost of the libidinal economy in a way that replicates the Eurocentric conception for self-aggrandizement. This is the epitome commodifying situations that drive the libidinal economy that dehumanizes black people, similar to how your role of the ballot claims imperialize the debate space, which outweighs in turn the case now. They say that the ballot needs to be framed about how they critique dialogue. However, that criticism will always be a dialogue of white supremacy, not the inherent libidinal drive to destroy the black body. Now they say that we need to prove their method is bad. All the reasons discussed above did that. Now they say that we are spreading so that somehow indicts their method. However, obviously Young is able to stand in solidarity with me and agree with the fact that lashing out at whiteness will never be a good idea when you concede almost every portion of the Poetics that talks about how you will be consumed by condemnation and how the white will consume you and cover you like snow. These are all links. Now you can make jokes and cross-sects about how your app is saying that lashing out is good, but that's fantastic because your entire app is a link and you're probably going to lose. Now next they say. Next, they say that we're silent. We obviously we're not silent. They say that we're silent on questions of white supremacy. The whole 1NC was a critique of white supremacy. We say that it's bad. We agree that the impacts and things that you discuss in the 1AC is bad, but the way you react to those things is what you should frame this debate around. Lashing out will never do anything. You talk about you never specify any sort of performance or affect of your performance that the judges should vote on, which is why you're going to extend the role of the ballot to go for our revolutionary black poetics now, because it's an optimistic stance that allows us to react within the structures that we face. Poetics are an actual survivability strategy that was used in this debate round that you can vote for. Nothing actually happens post the affirmative, which is just showing how you're lashing out and calling for self-aggrandizement. This is why the ballot will ultimately doom you.
Y'all have 840.
Okay. 412, man.
They in my back.
Hold the carpet. Like, hold the payment.
Can't see him down and then let him
Yeah. I guess like case overviews and Caleb songs. Exactly. Anyone alright?
When the white liberals of America stand up and champion the politics, uphold the politics, respectability, guarantee, except black people can't fight, vote, murder, stand up, submerge, martyr, term, that's the interruption, respectability, and white supremacy. The one you see is the interruption of norms, whiteness, and debate. We ignore submersion, questions, break, that challenge, search, and white, over assumption, overturn, break, matter, norm, seemingly fixed relation. This gives birth, progressive social change, diverse dialogue, misunderstand the politics, politics, and break the rule of the debate engage in intellectual dialogue, embrace pedagogical normal procedures that attempt to limit discussion of personal respectable matters. But they, with their arguments actively telling Marissa Moore, this is not the right time for your interruption. The way negative words that may us bind for respectability box because we're told that there's something more important to focus on or a different way in which we must perform the affirmative. When Bernie says just step back and let Marissa Moore get this piece, this is performing to break and whiteness. We think that negative silence is the break and doesn't let the disruption happen time and time again across. They say that lashing out is bad. This is exactly the tool of white agenda makes sure black people and rowdy and out of control. It's a tool like guarantees that we be quiet and docile. It's a tool that props on white supremacy through black silence. We think the one that sees most counterproductive view of argumentation because it's focused on making sure we can't lash out at what oppresses us. They don't let them get away with forcing us to say silent on the question of anti-black suffering. We can nevertheless obviously sit back and let violence perform, except the Butler evidence that says we must be able to lash out and say black lives matter again and again, be able to affirm the idea that black lives do matter in a situation where people think that the dominant teal knows that black lives don't matter. And extent the great evidence we must repeatedly make sure we don't silently question oppression within debate because debates get mounted on that people could become comfortable being silent and recent same black behind all the reporters in the Bernie Sanders event that harped on why Marissa Moore shouldn't be allowed to interrupt and disrupt. And if we win any risk of our method of the ad being a good idea, you ought to vote out because it brings that lashing out. You'll some benefit is going to keep proper. We're at the top. This is critically no part of the 1NC performance disprove the value theory of the ad. We agree that the 1NC performance is pretty slick, but it does nothing contest the thesis about the ad. We think that if we win the app has risk to do something on the 1NC after improving the reason why that's bad. We win this debate cross line respectability policy streaming here. The K is a perfect example of unjustified silence, and they can't win a link, which means the 1NC is unjustified reason silence the ad. And you frame your value this way is the ad a good idea. The answer is yes, and you can't find a reason for the 1NC. While the affirmative is a bad idea, you ought to vote act and extend that Davis Carter they conceded, which means they don't get it out solvency when we try and interpret poetry, we render it useless of its revolutionary power. There are multiple links. The first that when you present poetics within debate becomes argumentation, not art. The second is that when poetics are affirmed in debate, it becomes something to be flowed and broken down into words on a piece of flow paper. Destroys the idea of politics being uninterpretable. They make this argument about it's about who possesses the best method. We'll concede this from we're the only one with an actual concrete method. They make this argument that white supremacy is that we make white supremacy symptomatic, but we agree that this doesn't disprove the fact that white supremacy controls modernity. That's not a reason why the method of the affirmative fails and do this doesn't disprove the value of the affirmative. They make this argument that the alternative is rejection of the app. First of all, no one knows what the hell the alternative is, and it doesn't disprove the value of the app. It's not a reason why we shouldn't be able to disrupt. They make this argument that we didn't perform the app, but we control the definition of performance. Everything is a performance. They have to prove uniquely why using poetics is the only method of performance. We think that being able to use scholarship, being able to talk, being able to present, being able to break a specific method of performance, and they make this Rosanamon argument, but loving yourself is no more Rosanamon than the app is, and two, this is not impacted out. They make this argument that it's survivability and reaction to suicide. It makes sense in the public sphere when people actually get killed, but in debate it doesn't, because debate is a space where, regardless of what arguments I make, no one's going to kill me for it right in this space right now. Whereas on the public sphere, I understand that, yes, that's the thing. It makes argument that there's no material change. I can say the same thing about you, and second, it's not a question of solvency. We think that there's no way for us to be able to solve anything in debate, rather it's a question of intellectual productivity. They make this argument that there's no articulate reason why the affirmative is prerequisite. But first, we must do the app first because the only articulate method. Second, shut disruption into the space come first, and they make argument that we link to respectability policy because we don't perform. What the hell does that mean? They clearly don't understand what respectability politics is. They hold them to a higher threshold explanation. They make argument that we don't find hope, but we find hope in the idea of resistance. They can't choose what the way in which we interpret things like hope. They make argument that Will says that white supremacy is social structure, not political, but that's not true. Call we already did this explanation earlier. They make argument that white supremacy and anti-black is different. We agree. Why should we discard out that embarrassing cross-examination when we agree with you? They make this co-option decide not to debate. There's no such thing as co-option within debate rounds because that's a real thing outside of the debate round when there are things like politics. They make argument that we did that they did something but we didn't. But I already explained that previously. Let's go to permutation debate. They make this argument that the links are decided. Okay, let's take a look at the link debate. The first one, I don't know what the hell that said. If you were able to follow that school, the second was the pathology decide. First, we did agree, and second, it doesn't disprove the method of the app. The third is the self-control decide. There's a difference between when white people lash out, a difference between when black people lash out. The fourth was unflowable. The fifth was perm doesn't solve. This isn't a link argument. The next argument is that lashing out means that, but only street. It doesn't debate. It doesn't. Let's go to the. Except permutation, give the answer to the judge is not forced with the forces between the act and all, which means we can embrace politics and scholarship because counterparts the act doesn't disprove the act method. Syncretism very cool because syncretic methods are the perfect example of pluralistic scholarship. If we win the syncretism in the concept of work, then we win the perm is the best method. The net benefit to permutation the affirmative because we're able to affirm pluralistic scholarship. It means breaking down traditional norms in the debate. They make this argument that They make argument that there's a difference between knowing Black Lives Matter and yelling it at white people. Point at one white person on the panel, and I'll concede this round. The next argument they make is the exclusion. Decide the app is definitely not more exclusive than the alternate. They make this empathy decide only makes sense in the context of white judges. Black judges already know what it means to be black. They make this liberalism decide. You're overreading this. The ballot just means the app.
We have 8-11 left.
Yeah, we 2-5.
Yeah. See,
We
at least
should-
you're not. At least you're not 07.
We should have been 3-4.
How many 07 teams were there?
I don't think there was.
We had bats. I don't know this tournament.
We had awful speaks, and dude, the we had horrible speaks.